Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you're like us, you are constantly battling the noise of the modern world.
Trust me.
You're always searching for a philosophy that actually helps you live better, right now.
And that's exactly what we're here to unpack.
We are diving into a collection of really profound insights. They're compiled specifically for the pressures we all face.
Right.
Darius Foroux's focus on what matters. This is a brilliant set of modern Stoic letters, and they're designed to sharpen your resilience and deliver some serious, actionable inner peace.
It's a truly essential source, and what makes it so resonant, I think, is its structure.
The letters.
Exactly, the letters. It's written in the style of Seneca's famous correspondence. You know, those letters he wrote to his younger, struggling friend, Lucilius.
And Lucilius was just, completely overwhelmed.
Totally overwhelmed. He was caught up in the busy, pleasure-seeking life of Rome. So Seneca, the statesman and philosopher, wrote these letters as direct guidance.
And Foroux's basically done the same for us.
He's done us a huge service by updating that direct philosophical guidance for the 21st century learner. He's translating ancient wisdom into immediately relevant instructions.
And when you look at the world today, it's still a busy, pleasure-seeking world.
Oh, absolutely.
Only now it's amplified by 1,000 algorithms and screens?
That really sets up the core tension we're going to explore, doesn't it?
It does. On one side, you have the dominant modern philosophy, let's call it consumer hedonism or, escapism.
Right, and it promises happiness, but what it generally does is trap us on that infamous hedonic treadmill.
Always chasing the next high.
Exactly. We're constantly driven by consumption, by distraction, and the avoidance of any kind of discomfort.
We know it's happening too. Deep down, we're aware that this behavior, whether it's mindlessly scrolling social media or
buying things we don't need or drinking too much wine on a Tuesday night.
We know it's dangerous, but we fall for the trap daily.
Well, because it's the easiest path. And the Stoics, starting 2,000 years ago, they recognized that living well often means purposefully going against the herd.
It demands discipline.
It demands self-discipline and conscious choice to pursue what actually delivers that enduring happiness.
And that puts our mission today into perfect focus. We want to find the specific tools, the practical philosophical shifts that stop us from being enslaved by our own impulses and desires. We need to prioritize that deep, unending tranquility.
And Seneca advised his friend, and so he advises us. We must inquire what is the best, not what is the most customary thing to do.
So we're not looking for common habits.
Yeah.
We're looking for the best, most practical steps to take, starting right now with the inside game, the foundation of the self.
To build that foundation, we have to start with the first, most fundamental principle that defines Stoicism.
The dichotomy of control.
The dichotomy of control. For the modern learner, this isn't just some, quaint philosophical idea. It is the absolute prerequisite for stability.
Without it, you're lost.
You're lost. Lasting happiness is, it's mathematically impossible if we don't first establish clearly and ruthlessly what we actually control.
And this is Epictetus's chief task of life.
Yeah.
The starting point for every single action.
It is clearly identifying and separating externals not under my control. Things like the weather, national issues, the stock market.
Social media opinions.
Social media opinions, exactly. Separating those from the choices I actually control. And the principle is simple, but the source material makes it so clear that getting constantly concerned or internally agitated by externals is just a habit.
A really deep-seated, painful habit we need to break.
And it's not just costly in terms of time, it's costly to our mental health.
For sure.
You can't escape bad external events. Recessions will happen, political conflicts will arise, social issues will flare up. You have to learn to practice indifference to them if they start to impact your tranquility.
So what's the application? How do you start?
The author suggests starting your circle of influence extremely small.
Right. Focus inward first.
You must secure your own foundation first. Mentally, physically, emotionally. Then and only then do you expand outward.
Sequentially.
To your partner, your kids, your immediate friends. You just can't fix the world if your own house is in chaos.
Right. You have to focus on the leverage point where you have the most power.
Which is always your own internal reaction.
And when we talk about resources we can control, the sources put time right at the very top.
Yes. The Stoics treat time as our chief, most valuable, and non-renewable resource. yet we squander it with, frankly, alarming ease.
I mean, the way we talk about killing time is so revealing, isn't it?
It is. It's almost a cultural aspiration. And the author details these utterly useless pursuits that just consume our days.
Like what?
This could be mindlessly scrolling through an ex-partner's social media feed, which serves zero purpose but causes pain. It could be watching uninteresting TV just to fill a silence. Or, and this is a common modern one, hopping between Wikipedia pages or YouTube videos, just consuming complex information you can never possibly use or apply.
So you're gaining knowledge, but it's a kind of useless knowledge.
Exactly. It's knowledge that will never translate into useful action or character development. It is consumption for consumption's sake.
And that squandering, that waste of a precious, finite resource, that is what should truly upset us.
It should, far more than some insignificant critique we read online or a comment a colleague made.
That's a good point. If you treated your money like this, you'd be bankrupt in a week.
So why treat your time, which is far more valuable, any differently?
That conscious awareness of time connects directly to protecting your mental state, or what the source calls your mood.
Yes, in letter 2. We are highly sensitive social beings. We absorb the energy of others.
For sure, you might wake up joyful, energized, ready for the day.
And then you meet a friend or a colleague in the evening who is in a deep, depressed state, and suddenly you feel obligated to downplay your good day to match their mood.
That shift toward negativity happens so fast when moods collide. And often, negativity wins.
And the Stoic solution here is challenging. It's really challenging, yet it's beautiful in its blend of compassion and internal rigor.
What do they advise?
Well, Epictetus advised us to be outwardly compassionate and sympathetic to someone else's misery. So you use comforting words, you offer physical support, you even share their misery outwardly through empathetic language. But, and this is the key, we must never inwardly grieve with them.
Wow. I can see how that's incredibly difficult in practice, especially with people you love. Isn't it almost unnatural not to feel sad when a friend is genuinely hurting?
That's a fair challenge, and it really gets to the core distinction. The Stoic isn't advocating for coldness or apathy.
They're not saying don't care.
Not at all. They are advocating for protecting your own sanity and your own correct judgment.
Okay, so how does that work?
If you adopt their misery internally, you lose your ability to think clearly, and therefore you lose your ability to help them effectively. You just become two miserable people instead of one person who is stable enough to offer comfort and guidance.
So the stability is the service you offer them.
Precisely. If someone is upset by a financial loss, a relational failure, or even a tragedy, they are upset by their view of the situation, not the thing itself.
Because they're failing to distinguish what they control from what they don't.
Exactly. And if you inwardly grieve with them, you're basically validating their faulty judgment. The Stoic maintains their foundation, respects the difficulty of the situation, but recognizes that changing one's view of the world is an internal decision only that other person can make.
So preaching to them doesn't work.
It's patronizing. Our job is simply to execute our values in our own minds and remain a rock for them.
Which leads to the ultimate takeaway from this first section. Protecting your mood means accepting the uncomfortable truth that you are not, in fact, responsible for how other people feel.
Right.
Your responsibility is to cultivate your best self, which then makes you available to genuinely help others if and when they need it and are ready for it.
Once that foundation of control is established, we can then address the major disruptions that plague modern life.
The trifecta of internal suffering.
Right. Anxiety, fear, and disappointment.
Let's start with anxiety, which is covered in letter 4. It's acknowledged as a normal part of the human condition, like hunger. But the mind's signals aren't always helpful or proportional.
Not at all.
And the example that stuck with me was that omnipresent modern worry about whether people like you.
Oh, yeah.
Why didn't they respond to the text? Was this something I said during the meeting? The mind takes these small external signals and just generates massive internal stress.
And that internal stress is the mind identifying something it dislikes. Uncertainty, potential rejection, and demanding immediate but useless action.
Like checking your phone every 5 minutes.
Exactly. And Epictetus's advice just cuts through the noise. If you want to make progress, stop feeling anxious about things. The strategy isn't to fight the feeling, it's to practice detachment.
Can you walk us through a specific example of that detachment?
Sure. Think about that small financial loss the source references. Maybe losing $1,000 on an investment, something volatile like Bitcoin. The non-Stoic response is panic, anger, and then chasing the loss, maybe doubling down on the bad investment.
Which usually makes it worse.
Almost always, the Stoic practice is detachment. You stop dwelling on the lost money. You acknowledge that the anxiety is a worse injury than the financial hit.
So you tell yourself something different.
You practice saying, I am happy to detach from this loss so I can have peace of mind. What you lose is effectively the price you paid for that freedom.
So the financial hit becomes the tuition fee for a lesson in emotional resilience.
Exactly. Anxiety is always rooted in the fear that reality differs drastically from expectation.
We expect people to be polite, to like us, to respond quickly.
And when they don't, we panic. The challenge is recognizing that this expectation to be universally liked is unsustainable and, frankly, irrational.
Is your peace of mind not infinitely more valuable than what a coworker or even a family member thinks of you?
That's the question. We must be prepared to pay the price of not being universally liked. That acceptance of non-approval is the cost of internal freedom from anxiety.
So from anxiety, we shift gears slightly to fear. And Seneca gives us a deeply provocative cure in letter 6.
Very provocative.
Cease to hope, and you will cease to fear. That feels completely counterintuitive, doesn't it? We're culturally conditioned to believe that hope is the engine that propels us forward.
It's the thing that gets us out of bed, but Seneca recognized the paradoxical relationship between hope and fear.
How so?
He explains that fear keeps perfect pace with hope because both forces look far ahead into an uncertain future. They belong to a mind that is suspended, not grounded in the present.
Okay, I see.
So if you hope for something specific, I hope I get hired at company X, or I hope there is no COVID surge this winter, you are creating a specific expectation that, if it fails, will lead to intense fear or despair.
So specific hoping becomes a source of vulnerability.
It does. You're placing your internal stability on an external, uncontrollable outcome.
Which is the cardinal sin of Stoicism.
Exactly. That's why the source material advocates for a powerful mindset shift, drawing on the wisdom of Susan Jeffers.
And that is?
Replacing specific hoping with abstract wondering. Instead of saying, I hope I get a new job at this exact company by Tuesday, you shift the self-talk to, I wonder what my new job will be.
That slight adjustment changes the entire emotional tenor.
It does. It honors life's unpredictable nature. When we hope for specific outcomes, we are trying to dictate reality. We are trying to control life beyond the limits of the dichotomy of control.
But when we wonder,
we are letting life unfold, and as a Stoic, whatever happens, be it good, bad, or unexpected, is perfectly fine because we've trained ourselves to handle it.
And finally, protecting ourselves from the pain of disappointment, from letter 5. The pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of suffering is the fundamental human drive.
For sure.
But Epictetus calls fixed expectations, especially about things we can't control, foolishness.
And the author shares a very relatable personal anecdote about pursuing traditional publishing for a book.
Right, a process notoriously rife with rejection.
And external gatekeepers. Their strategy to avoid disappointment was radical. They focused solely on controllable actions, meaning creating the best possible proposal, writing the best possible book, and truly believing in their work. They deliberately did not desire the external factors.
Like a specific size of advance, or even getting the deal itself.
Exactly. By decoupling their emotional state from the ultimate outcome, they maintained their rationality. They could say, I did my best work, and whatever happens now is the market's decision, not a reflection of my worth.
That's power of it.
It allowed them to stay calm and rational throughout months of waiting and rejection, ready to accept any outcome, including self-publishing if the traditional route failed.
And this ties into how we manage emotions around loss and mortality, a favorite Stoic subject.
It's a huge one.
Yeah.
We will naturally feel sadness when a loved one dies, but the Stoic constantly reminds themselves of likely outcomes, like the mortality of parents or partners, to prevent that inner turmoil and debilitating regret when the event inevitably occurs.
That's the practice of negative visualization, a term often used in Stoicism, but I think a lot of people misunderstand it as being morbid.
It's not morbidity, it's inoculation against future suffering.
How so?
If you remind yourself today that your parents won't live forever, you are less likely to waste precious time fighting with them over trivial matters, like politics at the dinner table.
It encourages you to live with an acute appreciation for the present moment.
It does. Stoicism challenges us to consider the long-term emotional impact of our actions today, to ensure our lasting inner peace, and to avoid the crushing weight of regret. It shifts our focus from pleasure in the moment to peace over a lifetime.
Part 3 shifts gears into the active training of the mind itself. And it starts with observation and fiercely guarding our mental intake.
Of course.
The sources begin with Marcus Aurelius' famous journaling question, "My mind, what is it? What am I making of it? What am I using it for?"
That is the essential starting point for self-mastery. We have to become rigorous auditors of our internal landscape.
We have to identify what mental energy is being wasted.
Yes, on what the sources call useless thoughts. These include endless daydreaming, entertaining these elaborate fantasies about things you don't actually want to do, like suddenly becoming a successful rock star.
Right. Or the far more common practice of replaying past conversations over and over again, like a broken record.
Crafting the perfect retort hours after the argument is over. These internal activities consume huge amounts of energy but change absolutely nothing in the external world.
And journaling, when done purposefully, helps reveal those patterns, which is where the author's finance example comes in.
Yes.
The example of stock trading seems niche, but it perfectly illustrates how emotion can masquerade as logic.
It does. The author used journaling around specific financial mistakes, which exposed underlying unhelpful emotions, specifically greed and the compulsive need to be right.
And this manifested in a known trading error called averaging down in momentum trading.
For those unfamiliar with that term, momentum trading is about betting on upward movement.
Yeah.
If you buy a stock at $100 and it immediately drops to 90,
You buy more.
you buy more at 90. It's called averaging down. You hope to lower your overall cost basis so you break even faster. It sounds logical.
But it's not.
In momentum trading, it's often doubling down on a mistake driven by the greed of not wanting to take the small loss and the ego of needing to be proven right.
And the journaling revealed that.
The Stoic insight here is that by observing these thoughts on paper greed, ego, they could apply rational principles and stop the destructive behavior.
That need to guard the mind ties directly into blocking external influence. The source critiques consuming useless information.
Social media sugar, analyst gossip, even deep dives into celebrity drama.
The question is, why waste time reading what an ESPN analyst says about a game, which is pure speculation, when you could be watching the actual game, or better yet, engaging in truly useful activity?
And the historical parallel the source uses is Jesse Livermore, the legendary stock trader from the 1920s.
Right?
He famously retreated entirely from Wall Street to an isolated office specifically to maintain his continuity of thought.
He didn't want the noise.
He didn't want the groupthink or the opinions of others influencing his highly sensitive judgment. That's the power of actively guarding your mind. You cannot allow others to form your opinion.
Because if you listen to enough analyst gossip, you start confusing their opinion for your own judgment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We have to ask ourselves, is this information genuinely useful for my long-term purpose? Or is it just intellectual sugar that keeps me vibrating with useless noise?
Once the mind is clear of all that, we can harness the power of single-minded focus.
Right. Letter 11 reminds us of Marcus Aurelius' core principle for action. No random actions, none not based on underlying principles.
So every action, no matter how small, needs a philosophical foundation.
Yes. And the underlying principles are the two main Stoic pillars, focusing intensely on what you control and living rationally.
Which is often called living in agreement with nature.
Exactly. When you focus on control, you get clarity. You concentrate your energy on being your best self. Living rationally means not getting distracted by irrational desires or external chaos.
And what does living in agreement with nature specifically mean in a Stoic context? That's a term that gets thrown around a lot.
That's a great question. For the Stoics, nature doesn't mean camping or hugging trees.
Right.
It means acting according to the defining characteristic of humanity, which is reason. A dog's nature is to bark. A human's nature is to think rationally and morally. So living in agreement with nature means aligning your will with reason and avoiding the irrational impulses of greed, fear, or anger.
When you have that clarity of purpose, your actions stop being random.
They do. And that clarity often comes from having a higher aim or a passion project, like the friend the author mentions who was training for his 40th birthday.
The six-pack goal.
The six-pack, running a half marathon faster than he did in his 20s. The training ceases to be random. It's guided by a clear, personal, controllable purpose.
And when you dedicate singular focus for a set time, the progress is dramatic.
Absolutely. The author notes finishing a book draft in just one intense month compared to the 6 prior months of slower, distracted, and lower quality work.
But this is where the source introduces a necessary caveat.
It does, drawing on the extreme example of David Goggins. Goggins warns us that becoming uncommon amongst the uncommon requires sustaining that greatness in singular focus, which necessarily may upset the balance in your life.
That's a critical point for the modern learner who's obsessed with the idea of work-life balance. You can't be truly great at everything simultaneously.
Precisely. You have to make conscious, difficult choices. If you prioritize becoming exceptional at work, exercise, and family, that singular focus demands you sacrifice other areas.
Like having a rich social life or spending hours on hobbies.
Right. Trying to do everything leads only to mediocrity, burnout, or broken relationships because you are constantly deluded. Singular focus requires trade-offs.
And finally, in this section, we have to tackle the explosive issue of anger management.
Oh, yeah.
The washing machine breakdown anecdote is so effective because it illustrates how something utterly trivial can trigger intense destructive emotional reactions.
That triviality is the key. Seneca observed this tragedy 2 millennia ago. Anger, if not restrained, is frequently more hurtful to us than the injury that provokes it.
We damage ourselves far more than the broken appliance or the rude driver ever could.
And now we have the scientific understanding of the physical cost.
The cortisol.
The cortisol. Anger releases cortisol, the primary stress hormone. While evolutionarily useful against a saber-toothed tiger, cortisol wreaks havoc when triggered by meaningless modern stress.
It damages your body.
It disrupts the digestive system, destroys sleep quality, and impairs rational judgment. The calculation is simple. Every time you get angry, you harm yourself physically and mentally.
So what's the solution?
The solution recommended is self-correction, but done compassionately.
What does that compassionate self-correction look like?
Instead of beating yourself up or becoming your own inner antagonist, the Stoic practices treating the incident like a comedian observing behavior.
You step back.
You step back and look at the spectacle of yourself screaming at a piece of machinery. You laugh at the absurdity of it, realizing that you gave up your most valuable possession, your peace of mind, for something utterly meaningless.
That practice shifts the energy from internal punishment to observational humor.
It does. You decide that next time, the incident simply isn't worth the cost of the cortisol hit. Our deep dive now turns to aligning our actions with who we truly are.
Starting with Socrates' famous dictum, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom."
But the source material argues that the problem for most people isn't a lack of self-knowledge.
It's a lack of confidence.
It's a profound lack of confidence to live in agreement with that knowledge. And this failure of execution leads us to take bad jobs, enter unsuitable relationships, and make purchases that don't reflect our actual values.
The author's anecdote about buying the SUV is a perfect illustration of this.
It really is. They bought a big, rugged car because they liked the idea of trips and moving large items, a life of action.
When in reality,
they were an intense introvert who dislikes crowds, small talk, and the hassle of hauling gear.
so the car just sat there.
It sat there, rendering itself useless, because the purchase was based on a fantasy self, not the real self.
We force ourselves into roles or purchases that are unsuited for our inherent nature. Epictetus cautioned against this.
He did. Epictetus told us. In each action that you undertake, consider what comes before and what follows after.
A kind of pre-mortem analysis.
A rigorous one. Before committing to a major change, you must rigorously analyze the preparation required, what comes before, and the long-term daily consequences, what follows after.
And this is specifically meant to prevent setting out with great enthusiasm, only to give up ignominiously later.
Exactly, like the classic example of people rushing out of cities during the peak of COVID lockdowns.
They enthusiastically bought houses far away.
Only to regret the move later because they missed city energy, proximity to culture, and quick access to amenities.
They focused on the immediate relief.
They did, escaping density. But they failed to consider the daily consequences of that long-term misalignment. We have to ask, does this decision align with who I actually am, what I am truly good at, and am I prepared to live with the consequences?
And that solid foundation of self-knowledge allows us to stick to our chosen character. That's the focus of letter 18, standing behind your values.
Epictetus provided the perfect anchor here. He said, decide first what type of person you want to be and stick to it. Be the same person whether you are by yourself or with others.
And that is so profoundly liberating because you no longer have to calculate your behavior.
Not at all. If you live by a clear set of proper values, honesty, diligence, respect, you have nothing to hide and no behavior to adjust when the audience changes.
The author gives a practical, small-scale but high-stakes example of this.
The party.
Simply leaving a party group that started gossiping intensely or engaging in recreational drug use that didn't align with their values.
And they didn't feel that paralyzing urge to conform or be liked by strangers or acquaintances.
That emotional liberation is the prize.
It is. What matters most is that you like yourself, and that you remain true to the person you decided to be.
Marcus Aurelius aspired to be so honest and straightforward that no one could truthfully say otherwise about his character.
And that responsibility is entirely yours. No one can take away your freedom to choose the type of person you want to be.
Which flows perfectly into letter 17, focusing on self-worth beyond the external.
Yes.
We constantly confuse our intrinsic value with external possessions, the valuable watch, the cool car, the expensive degree.
Seneca challenged this idolatry of things directly. He said, "Think that nothing deserves admiration except the mind."
I love that.
The moment people admire your possessions, you start internally identifying with the object, forgetting that externals are fragile, temporary, and dependent on luck.
Anything that can be given can be taken away.
It can be removed by fortune. True self-worth must rely on character and the capacity of the mind, things that cannot be taken away by theft, recession, or natural disaster.
And the Stoic approach, we have to stress, is not anti-wealth. It's anti-attachment to wealth.
Yes, and this connects to their view of practical thrift. Seneca admired thrift because it promoted self-sufficiency, but he warned against turning it into extreme, painful self-punishment.
Like depriving yourself of necessities just to prove a point.
Exactly. The core issue is avoiding the rat race. Taking jobs we hate merely to buy things we don't need, or wasting inordinate amounts of time chasing insignificant savings.
It's about mindful consumption, not martyrdom.
It is. If your character is sufficient for self-worth, you don't need to buy anything today to feel good about yourself.
Let's transition into part 5.
Yeah.
Engaging with the world, beginning with the critical subject of decision-making.
Okay.
Letter 19 highlights how often we let others influence us, becoming a product of what our parents, partners, or corporate culture desires for us, rather than what we genuinely want.
And this phenomenon of opinion paralysis is illustrated so vividly by the story of the corporate coworkers, John and Ethan.
John took the plunge.
John decided to take the plunge and start his own consulting firm, trusting his own judgment and accepting the risk.
But Ethan,
However, was chronically concerned with other people's opinions. His partner, his parents, his colleagues' whispers.
he was paralyzed.
He bounced between 3 different corporate jobs, unable to take the plunge into self-employment he secretly wanted, paralyzed by external expectations.
So John accepted the uncertainty, while Ethan sacrificed his desire for internal validation.
Precisely. And Epictetus's counsel here is vital. Once you undertake a path you've rationally chosen, stick with it and don't pay attention to what people say.
People are so quick to offer unsolicited opinions.
All the time. Whether it's based on their own fears or jealousy, that is simply part of the social contract. You can't stop people from offering their thoughts.
But the danger is letting those opinions override a decision, deep down is right for you.
That is the core Stoic error. If you go to bed second guessing a major life choice, a relationship, a career, a decision to move after sharing it with someone, you are letting others get into your head far too much.
Decision-making in the Stoic framework should lead to lasting inner satisfaction.
Not chronic suffering caused by external noise. Your internal witness is the only one who matters.
Next, we have to address the psychology of wealth.
Letters 43 and 46. It's a common misconception that Stoics are anti-money or demand ascetic poverty. The source material is quick to refute this.
They see it as a tool.
Strictly as a tool, not a measure of worth or happiness. Epictetus, the former slave, permitted making money, but only if you remain honest, trustworthy, and dignified.
Your earpiece can't depend on your money.
Never. Seneca, who was massively wealthy, was clear. We should not be enslaved by our wealth. He challenged people to weigh themselves up by setting aside their money, house, and rank, and only consider your inner man. Are you proud of yourself absent your possessions?
His piercing point here is that a man eager for increase often forgets to use the wealth he has.
Yes. They are in a state of chronic accumulation, not enjoyment. If you believe your entire life depends on being rich, you'll constantly chase accumulation, becoming enslaved by the anxiety of loss.
So to gain real freedom,
Seneca famously practiced negative visualization in a concrete way. He would deliberately live simply for a day or two, wearing old clothes, eating little, sleeping on a hard surface.
and this voluntary poverty wasn't a punishment.
No, it was preparation. It taught him that poverty was not to be feared, which in turn freed him from the anxiety of losing his actual wealth. It's an insurance policy against fortune.
That proactive training makes the external condition irrelevant to the internal state.
Exactly. You are training to be content with what you have, which is the only real wealth.
And finally, in this section, how we choose our company, the true value of friendship.
Letters 57 and 61. The source critiques superficial friendships of convenience, which Seneca noted are adopted from self-interest and flee the moment they are put to the test.
The moment you need help or they can't profit from the relationship.
So the focus then should be on cultivating deep relationships with people who actively share your core values.
Real friendship is about mutual support.
Mutual support, shared success, and cherishing shared joy. Seneca noted that when he saw his friend Lucilius making philosophical progress, he himself grew stronger.
So we should use the success of others as inspiration.
Not as a source of jealousy, but as inspiration for our own path of betterment.
We tend to take our true friends for granted, don't we?
We do. Our partners, parents, siblings, those are the people we call immediately, instinctively, when something genuinely good happens.
We need to acknowledge and cherish that loyalty.
Being a good friend means being emotionally invested, dedicated, and appreciative. If the emotional investment isn't mutual, don't force the relationship. Dedicate your energy to the relationships that help you fulfill your nature and live rationally. Our final section focuses on the inescapable nature of life.
Impermanence, challenge, and the need for constant inner training to achieve true resilience.
And the first lesson here is adjusting plans, highlighted by the classic Stoic exercise forced upon us by life's major disruptions like the pandemic.
Epictetus' famous ship analogy.
Exactly. Enjoy the shore life's pleasures and comfortable routines, but always be ready to drop everything and hurry back to the ship when the captain calls.
The analogy stresses preparedness. It's about realizing we genuinely own nothing.
Everything, job, house, status, even relationships, is merely borrowed from fortune.
Epictetus put it with shocking clarity. If a spouse or a child dies, you just returned it.
And that perspective is not intended to remove sadness, but to prevent the inner turmoil caused by the irrational belief that we were entitled to eternal ownership.
It encourages a mindset of care without attachment.
Exactly. You treat the borrowed item with respect and gratitude, but you don't panic when the lender asks for it back. Plan all you want. We need rational plans to act, but we must maintain radical flexibility.
Because attachment is what causes suffering when plans change.
Next is the critical need for endurance training in letters 29 and 37. Musonius Rufus, one of the great Stoic teachers, stressed that training the soul and body requires consciously accustoming oneself to hardship.
Cold, hunger, scarcity, enduring pain.
Right. Reading philosophy alone is insufficient. Practice is the key to Stoicism.
This is where we learn the difference between theory and application.
It is. And Seneca offered practical training advice. He suggested quick physical exercise like running and weights, but insisted we must return quickly from the body to the mind, exercising it night and day with moderate effort.
Why the focus on moderate effort versus extreme effort?
Because extreme efforts are unsustainable and lead to crash and burn cycles. Moderate effort, exercised constantly, builds true stamina and prevents burnout.
For the Stoic, hardship is viewed as good.
And excessive comfort is seen as harmful, leading to softness and lack of preparation. By purposefully avoiding luxury, choosing simple food over opulent meals or a small house over a mansion, you are constantly training yourself not to fear losing everything.
This daily quiet training is what leads to genuine calmness when disaster strikes.
We must also master our self-talk, as covered in letter 32. Since we are reasoning animals, as Seneca said, we have the unique power to combat negative, passive, or fatalistic self-talk through rational intervention.
The author shares their struggle with chronic irritable bowel syndrome, IBS.
A physical condition that requires tremendous mental discipline. Initially, passive self-talk, I'm just going to rest and wait for this to pass, worsened the condition by encouraging lethargy and anxiety.
So they changed their approach.
They adopted a proactive, head-on approach, a voice of reason. I'm going to work through it. I'll fight this.
And they realized that exercise, though initially uncomfortable, actually improved their gut health.
A victory of reason over emotion, achieved through deliberate internal command.
That mental victory leads to the difference between knowledge and execution in letter 33.
A huge difference.
We live in an age where we accumulate immense knowledge. We try to make sense of the world through endless reading and podcasts, but often lack the stamina to apply it.
Life fundamentally requires two things: a plan, which comes from wisdom, and stamina, which comes from constant training, like an athlete.
We are athletes in the game of life.
And how do athletes improve stamina? They train constantly, turning learning into mindful, repetitive activity. If you know what is right but never do it, you are not wise, you are merely well-informed. The challenge is in the execution.
And this path of training and execution leads to living a conscious life, not an accidental one.
Yes. As discussed in Letter 27, Seneca wrote that it is shameful to be dazed in the midst of worldly confusion to ask, how did I come to this point?
Too many pivotal things in our lives are pure accidents.
Stumbling into a career because a professor knew someone, or getting married because it was convenient. Reasoning helps us make conscious choices based on our values.
Epictetus drives this home so powerfully. You don't need astrologers to predict your future.
Just look at your actions today. If you never challenge yourself physically, if you never learn new things, if you never guard your attention, you won't improve. Your future will be a predictable extension of your present laziness.
The ultimate sign of a conscious life is the feeling of progress at the end of the day.
Absolutely. You should cherish the feeling of being legitimately tired at the end of a day where you know you squeezed the most out of your day.
That physical and mental exhaustion is the clear signal that you are moving forward.
Shaping your future and not merely being carried along by the chaotic currents of the world.
This deep dive into focus on what matters has given us a clear roadmap out of the modern noise.
It really has.
The overarching message for the 21st century learner has to be the constant, relentless return to the dichotomy of control.
Distinguishing what is ours and what is not.
And then guarding our mind fiercely against the external noise and distractions of the world.
It really boils down to daily, sustainable self-improvement. The focus isn't on massive, heroic, or unsustainable efforts.
No.
It's on Seneca's idea of exercising the mind with moderate effort and acquiring something daily. A small piece of wisdom, a small victory over anger, a small act of discipline that will fortify you against misfortune.
It's about continually building and reinforcing that inner fortress.
So it can withstand any chaos the world throws at you.
Our time is limited, and Seneca reminds us that the true good of life depends not on its length, but on its employment. If you are constantly focused on a future event to make you whole, that distant job, that perfect house, that ideal relationship, you risk becoming a person who never has lived enough.
You are living constantly for tomorrow, sacrificing today. And that brings us to the final, provocative thought encapsulated in Marcus Aurelius' reflection, only a short time left.
He advised living as if you were alone out in the wilderness. What does that profound image of living in the wilderness mean for you, the listener, right now, sitting in a busy modern world?
Living in the wilderness means your only focus is what is immediately controllable and necessary for virtue.
You stop caring about performance for others.
You stop daydreaming about the perfect future because survival and present duty are paramount. It means avoiding the lifelong waiting room where we constantly defer our happiness until some external condition is met. No matter how much time you have left, whether it's decades or hours, it is actually enough, provided you decide to stop rushing past the present moment in pursuit of a mythical future.
Decide now to be the person who always sticks to their values. Be your own witness and focus only on the actions of betterment that truly matter. Go out there and start training.